My name is Julie. I'm standing in the middle of the Braddock Family Foundation's annual gala, watching as my father's world crumbles before my eyes. Just moments ago, my husband, Alex, quietly handed over 3 folders to key figures in the room, and now, the truth is starting to unfold. It all began in the small town of Millfield, a place where everyone knows everyone else's business. My father, Richard Thompson, was a respected figure in the community. He was the vice president of Millfield Bank and the head of the Thompson Family Foundation, a charity that provided scholarships to underprivileged students. He was a pillar of the local church, and people looked up to him. But beneath that polished exterior, there was a dark secret. I'm 32 years old, a certified public accountant, and a mother of 2 wonderful kids, Lily and Max. I've always tried to be the good daughter, calling my parents every Sunday, helping out with church events, and doing whatever I could to make them proud. But my father has always favored my younger brother, Ethan. When Ethan graduated from high school with average grades, Dad paid for his entire college education. When I graduated summa cum laude, he offered me a loan with interest. I got married to Alex, a talented architect, and Dad made a snide comment at our rehearsal dinner, saying I was lucky to find someone willing to marry me. Alex didn't say anything, but I could tell it hurt him. Still, I kept trying to win my father's approval. One Sunday afternoon, my mother, Sarah, called me while I was doing the laundry. She said the foundation's annual gala was coming up, and she needed my help organizing the financial reports for the board. I agreed, without hesitation. That evening, I drove to my parents' house while Dad was at the golf course. Mom led me into Dad's study, a room filled with awards and photos of his achievements. She handed me 2 file boxes and opened a spreadsheet on the laptop. As I started going through the entries, everything seemed normal until I came across a series of payments to a company called Summit Consulting. There were no contracts, no project descriptions, just a generic consulting fee. I scrolled further and found more payments, totaling over $50,000 over the past 2 years. Something didn't feel right. I took screenshots of the entries, thinking I'd ask Dad about it later. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I called Dad and casually mentioned the payments. His tone immediately changed. He snapped at me, saying I had no right to question his foundation. He told me to stay out of it and never mention it again. Over the next few weeks, things started to get strange. Ethan called me, telling me to stop snooping around. Aunt Grace canceled our lunch plans without explanation. Mom stopped answering my calls and texts. I realized Dad was spreading a story about me, saying I was paranoid and causing trouble. 2 days later, Dad invited me to the house to talk. When I arrived, the living room was set up like a courtroom. Dad sat in his armchair, Ethan was on the sofa, and Mom was nowhere to be seen. Dad told me I would never say a word about what I'd seen, or I'd be disowned. I refused to back down and told him I was just asking questions. I walked out of the house, my hands shaking. 3 days later, I woke up to a nightmare. Dad had posted on Facebook that he was disowning me, saying I had brought shame to the family. The post had already been shared widely, and within hours, my phone was ringing off the hook. Lily came home from school crying, saying a classmate had told her I was a bad person. At work, people were treating me differently. My boss, Mr. Johnson, called me into his office and told me 2 clients had asked about the post. I felt like my world was collapsing. But Alex, my amazing husband, was by my side. He started digging into the foundation's records, and what he found was shocking. He discovered that Summit Consulting had been dissolved 2 years ago, yet the foundation was still making payments to them. He also found 2 other shell companies with similar patterns of payments. In total, over $185,000 had gone missing from the foundation. Alex also found an old board member, Mrs. Jenkins, who had been pushed off the board after asking questions about the payments. She provided us with an email from Dad, pressuring her to resign. And then one day, we received a manila envelope in the mail. It was from Mom. Inside was a USB drive with Dad's personal financial records, which showed exactly how he had been embezzling money from the foundation to pay for Ethan's apartment. We knew we had to do something. The foundation's gala was approaching, and we decided to expose the truth. We prepared 3 folders with all the evidence and planned to hand them to the board chairman, the pastor, and the bank's compliance officer. And now, here we are at the gala. Dad is up on stage, accepting an award for his work with the foundation, looking like the perfect pillar of the community. But Alex is walking across the room, calmly handing out the folders. Dad notices and tries to stop him, but it's too late. The board chairman, Mr. Harris, looks at the evidence and calls Dad into a back room. As the truth unfolds, Dad's face turns pale. He tries to make excuses, but the evidence is overwhelming. The foundation's bank accounts are frozen, and an investigation is launched. In the days that follow, Dad is suspended from his job at the bank and removed from his position as a church elder. Ethan is reassigned to a back office role. And the Facebook post that started it all is now seen as evidence of a guilty man trying to cover up his crimes. The apologies start to come in. My neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, brings me a pie and apologizes for believing Dad's lies. Mr. Johnson promotes me at work, saying I deserve it. The pastor sends me a letter asking me to consider joining the new board of the foundation. Mom calls me, crying, saying she's sorry for not being stronger. Life isn't perfect. Some relationships have been broken, and trust will take time to rebuild. But I've learned some important lessons. Silence isn't loyalty, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to expose the truth. And you don't need to be loud to be powerful. All you need are the right documents and the courage to stand up for what's right.